All right, Southern Railway System that gives green light to innovation. Locomotive Troubleshooting Handbook. Assistant Vice President Mechanical. All right, for schematic, refer to page 12. The excitation system voltage notches GP8 the GP38-2 show throttles 2, 4, 6, and 8. Throttle response modules THPT to negative battery voltage 74 volts all the way across the notches. Throttle position is throttle position 3 to negative output RC is throttle 23, throttle notch 43, 57, 6, 8, 68. All right, throttle positions, two throttle positions 10 to the negative output SB1, 68 across the field, 2, 4, 6, and 8. Rate control module, the RCT rate control module to the throttle position 3 to the negative input throttle 3 that gives you a 23, 43, 57, 68 on 2, 4, 6, and 8. Your rate control to the throttle position 13, the negative output of the left right LR. Limiting limit load regulator would be 2 throttle notch 2, 18, 4, 22, 6, 35, and 8, 44. Your sensor bypass module, sensor bypass throttle position 1 to negative input for the throttle position 10, 68 across the board. Terminal 2, 4, 6, and 8. Throttle sensor bypass throttle position 7 to negative output GX8. 68 through for 4, 2, 4, 6, and 8. The sensor bypasses throttle position 2, negative the input with a sensor SE14, 68, 2, 4, 68, 6, 68, 8, 68. Sensor bypass 10, throttle position 3, the negative input of the LR load regulator would be 2 at 18, 4 at 20, and 6 at 35, 8 at 44. Your sensor bypass throttle position 4 to negative, it would give you a 2, 17, 4, 21, 6, 34, and 8, 43 volts. Sensor bypass the throttle position 5 to negative. Your throttle position voltage for 2 would be 25, 4 would be 30, 60, 36, 6, 55 volts, and 8, 68 volts. General excitation module. The GX throttle position to negative, TB throttle position 8 to negative, the input sensor bypass 7. 68 volts for 2, 4, and 6, and 8 throttle. Then GX throttle position 4 to negative output GV. Ground generator voltage module 8, 68 for 2, 4, 6, and 8 throttles. General voltage regulator to throttle position 8, and the negative input general excitation module for 68 volts for 2, 4, 6, and 8 throttle. Generator voltage for the throttle position negative output of the sensor sensor module would be 68 for 2, 4, 6, and 8 throttle. Your sensor module throttle position 13 and negative input with the generator voltage would be 68 for 2, 4, 6, and 8 throttle. Sensor module throttle position 14 to negative output with a sensor bypass 2 at general voltage. The voltage for 2, 4, 6, and 8 would be 68 volts. Sensor module to opposition to the sensor module throttle position 8 balanced, and sensor throttle position 6 is sensor module throttle position 10 at 3-phase AC. Sensor module throttle position 8 through throttle position 10 would give you D14. And those are bracketed together at throttle position 2, 90 volts, 3, 4, 105 volts, 6, 105 volts, and 8, 215 volts. The next is a 3-part grouping with a sensor module throttle position 5 through 11, and the solenoid control, the generation selection control rectifier and sensory module terminal transfer throttle position 7 through 11 the gate, sensor module throttle position 9 through 11 signals, and all those notches 2, 4, 6, and 8 have the same voltage of 1 volt. Main generator field plus the generator excitation control rectifier at the AR 10 would be 36 volts at 2, 4, throttle 4, 45 volts, throttle 6, 60 volts, throttle 8, 60 volts. Unit setup with the self-load values obtained with this actual operation will vary. The following relays different directly affect the excitation relay would be your GFA, general field auxiliary relay, general field auxiliary relay, general field auxiliary contactor, general field relay, general field contactor, general field decay contactor. Your motoring relay, the BR would be brake relay and wheel slip relay. And then it shows you electrical cabinet schematic. Another electrical schematic contact. Shows these control rectifiers. Radio control, selector handle switches, control fuel pump, radio control fuel pump, reverse handle switch, reverse directional relay, forward relay, RVF 1, 2, 3, 4, transfer switch, forward relay, and then their wattages, and then the motor cutoff switch, reverse relay. Reverse directional relay, forward reverse, reversers in these 3-1, local control contactor, local control breaker, and power control, motor cutoff switch, reversers, reverser relays, reverser forward, reverse relays, ground switch, isolation switch, braking switch, motor fuel, wheel slip relays on the bottom, and then I've read this is the power control, and then it shows the cabinets. Your throttles, another control, standing equipment, and cabinet equipment marking. This once again is your reversers, motor cutouts, reverser handles, shut off power feeds, SD4 power control. Alright, let's read the excitation system control of the SE40, throttle notch 2, 4, 6, and 8, throttle response panel. Throttle response panel A to negative, the input with the voltage regulator is at 72 volts for 2, 4, 6, and 8 notches. Throttle response panel at D to the negative output over the RCP. Rate control panel would be 29 volts at 2, 58 volts at 4, 67 volts at 6, and 72 at 8. Rate control panel, the rate control 2, the negative, the input with the transfer relay panel D, the 29 volts at 2, 58 volts at 4, 67 volts at 6, 72 volts at 8. Real rate control panel 3, the negative, the output of the LR, our load regulator, would be 22 throttle at 20 at 2, 40 at 4, 47 at 6, 52 at 8. Rate control panel 6, the negative input with a wheel slip control, wheel slip WSR, wheel slip contactor 22 at throttle 2, 42 at 4, 48 at 6, 53 at 8. Wheel slip relay panel 8 to negative output with the rate control panel 6, 22 throttle volts 2, 42 volts 4, 48 volts 6, 53 volts 8. Wheel slip control 10 to the negative input with load regulator would be 16 volts at 2, 24 volts at 4, 34 volts at 6, 43 volts at 8. Wheel slip control 11 into the output of the SBP or sensory bypass panel on the load regulator would be 16 volts at 2, 24 volts at 24 volts at 4, 34 volts at 6, 43 volts at 8. Sensor bypass funnel, easy. The negative input would be 72 volts for 2, 4, 6, and 8 notches. Sensory bypass valve 19, output sensor 19, 71 volts at 2, 4, 6, and 8. Sensory bypass panel 20, the negative input sensor 20, 71 volts, 2, 4, 6, and 8 notches. Sensory bypass panel load regulator negative input with a wheel slip control panel 11, but it'd be 16 of 2 volts at 2, 24 volts at 4, 34 volts at 6, 43 volts at 8. Sensory bypass panel for the FB to the negative input with the PCP would be 16 volts at 2, 25 volts at 4, 35 volts at 6, 4 volts at 8. Your sensory bypass panel sensory is 19 negative to negative would be 71 volts 2 for notches 2, 4, 6, and 8. Sensory 20 negative would be 71 volts 2, 4, 6, and 8. Sensor 4 to 8 balanced 3. Guess that would be 71 volts across the phase. Sensor 4 and 8 of the phase AC would be 90, and sensory 8 is sensory 12 D14 and output 95 voltage at 2, 135 volts at 4, 175 volts at 6, 200 voltage at 8. Sensory 14 through 13 SCR sensory control relay. Generator excitation control rectifier in the gate and the triggers would be 2 volts at 2 and 1 for 4 volt for 4, 6, and 8 notches. Unit self-loading varies outline and actual operation will occur in the GFA. You have the volume relays directly affect the excitation would be the generator field auxiliary contactor, generator field decay contactor, general field regulator, wheel slip 25, wheel slip 36, and braking regulator, or BR. What is BR? Brake relay. Then it goes over another schematic. The cab views of their electrical cabinets. It shows basically your control for motor cutoff switches and reverses forward and backwards, and your fuel pump to the control stand. Directional control shows the directional control excitation system voltages. SC45. Alright. Your excitation control system voltage SC45 with throttles 2, 4, and 6, 8 notches. Throttle response panel with throttle response panel 8 and negative input with the voltage regulator would be 72 volts for the 2, 4, 6, and 8. Throttle response panel with the D, the negative for the output with the RCP with the or your rate control panel would be 24 volts for 2, 4, 38 volts for 4, 55 volts for 6, and 72 volts for notch 8. Your rate control panel, with 2, the negative input with the transfer relay panel with a D, the 24 volts for the tile through, and then the 38 volts for 4, 39 volts. Remove the 55 of the 72. Jesus. Alright, wheel slip relay. Wheel slip relay panel 8 negative output with the rate control panel 18 volts 2, 19, 29 volts 4, 40 volts 6, 52 volts 8. Wheel slip contract and control relay the negative input with the load regulator would be 17 volts at 2, 27 volts at 4, 37 volts at 6, and 47 volts at 8. The wheel slip control 11 to the negative of the output of the sensor bypass panel with the load regulator would be voltage at 2 with the 17, 27, 4, 37 47 and 6, and 47 and 8. Sensory bypass panel with the EZ, the negative input with the V2GX4 with a 72 volts across 72 volts for 2, 4, 6, and 8. Sensory bypass panel 19, the negative output sensor for the 19, 71 volts over the 2, 4, 6, and 8. Sensory bypass panel 20, the negative input sensor for the 20, 71 volts for 2, 4, 6, and 8. Sensory bypass load regulated input with the wheel slip control panel 17 volts at 2, 28 volts at 4, 38 volts at 6, and 48 volts at 18. Sensory bypass panel for the FB would be to negative the input of the PCP with the 4 would be 18 volts and then 2, 29 volts 4, 41 volts, 50 volts for 8. Generator field excitation motor generator excitation module GX. The throttle position 8 with the or should I say, is this transition pedal throttle response? Throttle position 8, the negative input with the voltage regulator, 72 volts for the 2, 4, 6, and 8, the general voltage regulator, T throttle position 4, the negative output with the general excitation module 8 with the 72 volts across the board, sensor panel, sensor for the sensor, and the 19, the negative input with the sensor bypass panel, the 19, 71 volts for 2, 4, 6, and 8 throttles, sensor 20, the negative output with the sensor bypass panel 20 with the 71 volts for 2, 4, 6, and 8, and then sensors 4 through 8, and 4 to 8, 4 to 12, and 4 to 12, in the three-phase balanced ACD 14 output, 90 volts for a 2, 134, 35 volts for 4, and 170 for throttle position 6, and 210 volts for 8, notch 8. Sensors 14 through 13, and the general excitation controlled rectifier and signals in balance DC is at 1 volt for throttles 2, 4, 6, and 8. Once again, the unit self-load with the values obtained within the actual operation will vary. The following relay directs the effect of the excitation, the general field auxiliary contact, the general field relay, the brake power contactor, wheel slip relays, 14, 25, and 36. And it shows more electrical cabinets, and then more electrical cabinets, and then the main panel equipment, your fuses, your wheel slip panel, your control panel, engine control panel, control equipment, stand equipment, control equipment cabinets, electrical control cabinet. Then it shows a schematic, once again, your brakes and your reverser and your power to your motors. Alright, for schematic, refer to page 12 of the SG42 for the 2, 4, 6, and 8 throttles. The throttle position of the TH13, throttle position 1, the negative battery voltage 74 volts for the notches 2, 4, 6, and 8. Throttle position TP, the negative output over the RC. Rate control module 21 volts 2, 35 volts 4, 50 volts 6, 68 volts 8. Throttle position 10 to the negative output of the sensory bypass panel 1, 68 volts for 2, 4, 6, and 8, and the throttle. Rate control module, rate control throttle position 3 with the negative input with the throttle position 3, 23 volts for 2, 35 volts for 4, 50 volts for 6, 68 volts for 8. Rate control panel throttle position 13, the negative output with the load regulator 16 volts for 2, with 26 for 4, 37 for 6, 50 for 8. Rate control panel, rate control module with the transfer throttle position 16, 6, the negative input with the wheel slip module 20, 17 volts throttle 2, the 28, 4 with the 39 of the throttle 6, and 51 with the voltage 8, notch 8. Wheel slip module throttle 20 to negative output of the RC, which would be your rate control panel. Rate control 6, 17 volts 2, 18, 28 volts 6, 4, 39 volts 6, 51 volts 8. Wheel slip penetrating throttle position 12 with a negative input with the load regulator 16 volt 2, 26 volt 4, 36 volt 8, 6, and 46 volt 8. The wheel slip, then the transition throttle response module 11 to negative output. Straight bypaddle 14, 16 volts 2, 26 volts 4, 36 volts 6, 46 volt 8. Sensory bypass module. Sensory bypass throttle position 1, negative input with the throttle position 10, 68 volts would be for all across the board. Sensory bypass panel module, transition panel 7, the negative output with the general excitation module 8 over the 68 volts for 2, 4, 6, and 8 throttles. Sensory bypass panel 2, the negative input of the SE or the sensor module 14, 68 volts for throttles number 2, 4, 6, and 8 nodule. The sensory bypass panel T transition panel, the negative input load regulators 2 voltage 16 for 2 voltage, 26 for 4 volt, no, for notch 4, 36 for notch 6, and 46 for notch 8. Your sensory bypass panel transition panel 4 to negative would be 16 volts 2, 28 volts 4, 39 volts 6, 49 volts 8. Sensory bypass panel transition panel 5 to negative 17 volts 2, 30 volts 4, 43 volts 6, 51 volts 8. Generator excitation module throttle transition panel to the negative input with the sensory bypass panel 68 for 2 notches 2, 4, 6, and 8. Generator excitation module transition panel to the negative output of the generator voltage regulator 8, 68 volts across 2 notches 2, 4, 6, and 8. Generator voltage regulator GV generator voltage regulator transition panel 8 to the negative input of the generator excitation module 68 volts across 2 notches 2, 4, 6, and 8. Generator voltage transition panel negative output of the sensory module 13, 68 volts 2, 4, 6, and 8 notches. Sensory module of the transition panel 13, negative input of the generator voltage regulator 68 the 2, 4, 6, and 8 notches. Sensory bypass module of the transition panel of the negative output of the sensory bypass module 2, 68 volt voltage for notches 2, 4, 6, and 8. And then let's go with the three-phase balance output D14 sensory bypass 26. They would be 90 volts for 2, 135 volts for 4, 165 volts for 6, 205 volts for 8. And then your sensory module transition panel 5 to 11 of your generator excitation controlled rectifier signals and balance DC would be 1 volt. Once again, the GFA, the generator field auxiliary contactor, GFX, generator field auxiliary relay, general field contactor, general field decay contactor, motor relay, and then your brake relays 1, 2, and 4 with a wheel slip relay, and then shows the control panels for these. All right, then it goes for a cost estimate. Damages direct locomotives. It shows the GP unit cost, part numbers. I wonder if it has like a little, and then like, and that has been a reading of your Southern Railway System that gives the green light to innovations, the Locomotive Troubleshooting Handbook, and this is 579. It doesn't look like there. It shows the publisher, and but we'll just say it's the Southern Railway Locomotive Troubleshooting Handbook. All right, peace.